an issue or a confrontation or a difficulty, that they learn to discuss it and work it through and learn to negotiate and compromise and give way to each other. The mutual giving way, then the children will watch how issues are dealt with. They'll learn that you can deal with them.
So communication would be one of the keys for them to begin to work through their stuff. But what other tools would you give to them?
Well, one of the things that I would work through with a couple who are having real difficulties in communicating would be to lay down some ground rules for argument management. People often have got into such a habit of being irritated, snapping, arguing, shouting about it to each other, that they don't realise how quickly they do it or what's happening to get to them to that point. So the first thing to do is have strategies for not descending into an argument. So I would suggest that they start learning to be more aware of themselves and recognise when they stop talking in the kind of tone of voice that we're talking, and their voice gets tenser or louder, or they feel their chest tightening, or some people feel it in the stomach and they feel the tension building up. And to recognise when that's happening, because once that started happening, you are no longer really communicating, because you're going into that fight or flight syndrome. The adrenaline is surging, you're feeling angry or cross or tense. And usually that's when it rolls on into argument.
Spirals out of
Spiral,
control.
that's it, exactly. So I would suggest that they start recognising when that happens. And as a couple, agree that whoever recognises that first will give a signal, and they both agree that at that point they separate. They leave the situation, one goes out of the room, one goes for a walk, or do whatever they're doing, but they drop the subject they're talking about. Because when you get to that point, you can't communicate properly. But with the agreement that they will come back when they've calmed down after a certain amount of time and start discussing it again. Because very often what will happen is that one person will feel very frustrated that they've an issue that they want to talk about, and the other one will just walk away from them, and nothing ever gets resolved. So it's getting the balance between understanding that you may have to walk away, but that you know that you will come back to it and discuss it when you are calm.
Right.
And when you've learnt to be able to discuss calmly. So that's the first thing to learn.
Okay. Now, you said earlier that part of it is having an agreement of a signal, that if it gets to that sort of boiling point, that there's some kind of signal that they will choose. Obviously it's individual to each couple, but what sort of signals would you advise?
Well, I mean, you can make it fun. You could say green elephants or domino or whatever, or maybe just even time out. I would say, you know, if it's too tense to be humorous about it, you know, you can just put your hand out and say, I need time out. And whatever that signal is, no matter how hard it is for the other person to stop at that point and let go of what they want to say, you agree to go your own ways. And it's very useful to agree a certain amount of time. Work out how long it takes for you both to calm down, so the adrenaline has left your system, you're feeling calm, totally calm, before you resume talking about it. And even then, it may not be time yet for them to tackle important issues. This is just the first stage of avoiding arguing. And that's where counselling comes in, because then they can bring their issues to counselling and work some of them through and get strategies for that, for dealing with them in a safe place in the counselling room. It isn't easy, but unless it's managed, unless a person is able to exert a certain amount of self-discipline on themselves, then you're not going to learn to be able to communicate. And so much about relationships is about self-discipline.